just sit back and relax, maybe even have a little nap, have a lucid dream while I cover the basics. So my name is Charlie Morley, and I have been lucid dreaming for 20 years. And I spent the last 11 years traveling around the world, teaching people how to lucid dream. So that's my thing. I write books about it. I do courses about it. I've got a new Mindvalley quest teaching you guys how to do it, which is coming soon. But in this talk, rather than teaching you how to do it, I want to open your mind to the potential of it. So first of all, let's start with the basics. What is a lucid dream? A lucid dream is a dream in which you're actively aware of the fact you're dreaming as the dream is happening. So it's not just a really vivid dream. It's not a dream where you see future events and those future events come to pass. And it's not an out-of-body experience where your consciousness shifts out of the body. It's specifically a dream where you're sound asleep, but while you're sleeping and dreaming, you go, aha, this is all a dream. That's what makes it a lucid dream. It may well be vivid. It may well see future events. It may well lead to an out-of-body experience. But by definition, a lucid dream is simply a dream where you go, aha, I'm dreaming as the dream is happening. Now, lucid dreaming doesn't happen in that in-between state. It's not a hypnagogic phenomena. It's not a shamanic journey. It's not yoga nidra. Although yoga nidra, shamanic journeying, all these things can help with lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming actually happens in REM dreaming sleep, which comes at the end of your 90-minute sleep cycle. So you are totally asleep when you have a lucid dream. If you ever wondered what a lucid dreamer looks like when they're having a lucid dream, they look like this. They're totally out for the count. So you're not half awake, half asleep. You are dreaming. But in the dream, you become actively aware of the fact you're dreaming. The reason I labor that point is because we have a problem with the term. The term lucid dreaming doesn't really connote the definition of what it is, because lucid means something that's clear, something that has clarity. And just because the dream's clear doesn't mean it's lucid. So possibly a better term would be conscious dreaming, because that's what makes it lucid, when you're conscious within the dream. Now, I can't see you guys go on webinar function, but maybe you can hit the hand button. Who here has had a lucid dream? Who here has ever had a dream where in the dream you've gone, aha, I'm dreaming? Okay, I'm seeing loads of yeses come through. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Whee, I love this. About a gazillion yeses. Okay, so for those who haven't hit yes, or are still hitting yes, have you ever had a nightmare where in that nightmare you've gone, I've got to wake up, I've got to wake up? If you've ever had that experience, that was also a lucid dream. Because the moment you acknowledged there was a place to wake up to, you acknowledged you were dreaming. So a little footnote on this, because this is a different talk, my nightmare talk. If you are ever lucky enough, and I do mean lucky enough, to become conscious and lucid within a nightmare, don't wake up. Every time you wake yourself from a nightmare, the unintegrated trauma that led to the creation of the nightmare remains unintegrated. That's why your nightmares recur. Surely you've wondered that. Why don't my happy dreams recur? Why doesn't that dream where I'm having a dinner date with Tom Hardy or whoever your favorite, Hollywood star is? Why have I never had that dream more than once? But why do I have that nightmare every week or every month or whenever it is? Because nightmares, every nightmare we wake from, every nightmare we reject, every nightmare we see as something bad has to come back. Nightmares aren't there to punish us. They're there to integrate our shadow. So if you do ever become lucid within a nightmare, stay in the nightmare for as long as you can. Because as the great Krishnamurti said, the seeing is the doing. Just to remain in a nightmare knowing I'm not really in danger, I'm simply dreaming about danger or dreaming about trauma, can be enough to unravel trauma in just one lucid dream. The reason I'm really into this at the moment is because this is what my new book's about. I spent the last few years working with veterans from the armed forces, from Afghanistan, Iraq, etc., and previous wars too, who are coming back with really bad nightmares. And what we found is that lucid dreaming can be a really powerful tool to help integrate those nightmares. Footnote over, back to the main talk. So a lucid dream is a dream where you know you're dreaming as the dream is happening. Once that happens, you can control, although I'll be careful with that word, direct and choreograph the dream at will. So once you know that you're dreaming, you gain access to the world's most powerful virtual reality simulation, your own subconscious mind. In a lucid dream, you are inside your own psyche. You are literally walking around a three-dimensional projection of your own mind. And you can choose what to do. Now, if that sounds psychedelic, it should. There's a renaissance in psychedelic experience now, psychedelic therapy and all this stuff, and some of it's really, really great. But if you want a free psychedelic experience, where you don't need to go and see a shaman in the Amazon, or you don't need to find some dude on the street. You can go into your own mind in bed, because in the lucid dream, you have access to this huge psychedelic experience. So once we're lucid, we know that we're dreaming and we can choose what to do. So let's say you want to fly through the sky. Most people will go, boom. Well, most people. I'm a Superman flyer. Again, we can have a yes in the chat box here. Usually 3 main types of flyer in their lucid dreams. Who's a Superman flyer? Who flies like this? Any yeses for that? Second type is the swim. Here we go. Second type is the swim flyer. Anyone fly like that in their dreams? Quite a few people. Oh, there we go. And the third main type of flyer in the dreams is the bouncer, who kind of like get a bit of gravity and then get a bit of gravity. Okay. Oh, the swimmer, we got bouncers coming through. Okay, cool. So in the lucid dream, let's say I want to fly. Put my hand up like Superman and I fly. Now, you might think that that means I'm controlling the dream. Well, I may be controlling my subjective experience. I'm controlling how fast I fly. I'm controlling left, controlling going right. But to say we're controlling the dream is actually to underestimate the power of the subconscious mind. Because although we may be controlling our subjective experience, what is controlling the trees that I'm flying over? What is controlling the people walking in and out of the shops if I'm flying over a scene of London? What is controlling the wind on my face as I fly through? I'm not choosing for that to happen. So although I may be controlling my subjective experience, the vast majority of the dream is not under our control. So lucid dreaming is not about dream control. It's actually about making friends with the subconscious mind. And that's why it's such a powerful tool for psychological integration. No sailor controls the sea. Think how arrogant a sailor would be to say, I control the ocean. And yet, a sailor can sail as if they were in control. Why? Because they have such respect for the ocean, such knowledge of the tides, of the stars guiding them, of the coral reefs, of where the sea monsters lie, that they can sail as if they were in control. That's the same with lucid dreaming. Just as it would be an arrogant sailor to believe they control the dream, to control the sea, I believe it's an arrogant lucid dreamer who believes they control the dream. So we don't want to control it, we want to befriend it. But if you make friends with the subconscious mind, you are making friends with 95% of your potential. I'm sure you've heard that old adage, the post-Jungians use of the iceberg of consciousness, right? Above the surface is the top 10%, the conscious mind, that which we're aware of, that which we can see. Below the surface, the iceberg, the vast majority, 90%, the unconscious mind, that which we can't see. In a lucid dream, you are taking that top 10% of your consciousness and flipping it downward into that 90% of our fullest potential. Now, that might sound a bit like hypnotherapy, and again, it should. If we only had 30 seconds left, if this were the elevator pitch, for want of a better term, if I was giving you the elevator pitch for lucid dreaming, I'd say, anything you can treat through hypnotherapy, you can also treat through lucid dreaming. So working with trauma, as I've mentioned before, working with negative thought programming, working with life manifestation, working with life skills rehearsal, working for confidence boosting, but also just like hypnosis can be used for a stage show, also lucid dreaming can just be loads of fun. I taught myself to lucid dream when I was 16 years old. I'd had some lucid dreams before when I was like 11, 12, but 16 was when I bought the books and kind of taught myself how to do it. So at 16 years old, before I got into Buddhism, before I ended up living in a Buddhist center for 8 years with the monks and nuns, I taught myself to lucid dream. Now at 16 years old, when I gained access to the world's most powerful virtual reality simulation, where the rules of society didn't apply, you can imagine what I got up to. Yes, a lot of sex and a lot of skateboarding. At 16, those were like 2 of my favorite things. I'm not sure how much it's changed. I did get very good at skateboarding though, so the practice thing seemed to work. The other thing, not so much. So you can, of course, just use lucid dreaming for fun. And that's totally fine. If you get lucid tonight, and by the way, your chances of getting lucid tonight have just skyrocketed because you're listening to me talk about it. You're listening to somebody say it's possible. And in a minute, you're going to hear me give you the science that shows it's possible. If you do get lucid tonight, then maybe you do just want to fly about in your first lucid dream, have sex with a movie star, do some skateboarding, whatever you like. But once you've done that, I want to open you up to the huge potential for both spiritual and psychological growth that lucid dreaming holds. It's a funny story to finish on that 16-year-old story. I got into Buddhism when I was about 18, 19 years old. And when I got into Tibetan Buddhism, they had this thing called dream yoga. I kept hearing this term. I said, what is dream yoga? And this monk that I asked, he said, oh, dream yoga is the Tibetan Buddhist spiritual practice of lucid dreaming. And I was like, oh, lucid dreaming, I do that. And he went, oh, okay. Well, yeah, we've been doing it in Tibetan Buddhism for like 1,000 years. And I said, really, lucid dreaming, you guys do that? Well, what do you use lucid dreaming for? And he said, we use it to do our spiritual practice while we sleep. We use it to explore the nature of reality. And we use it to prepare for the death and dying states. That was this penny drop moment. Whereas this kid who just used lucid dreaming for sex and skateboarding, I suddenly realized, wow, I've had the keys to something very powerful, but had never opened the lock. And then embarrassing, the monk said to me, so you can lucid dream? And I was like, yeah, I can lucid dream. He said in front of everyone, so what do you do in your lucid dreams? And I was so embarrassed. I was like skateboarding, like a lot of skateboarding. So let's look at the science of lucid dreaming before we have a little time for questions. Okay, I've got half a brain here for my demonstrations. Okay, first off, lucid dreaming is a verified phenomena of REM dreaming sleep. Anyone listening now who doesn't believe that, just Google it, guys. All the research is out there. Maybe you meet someone after this talk who says, oh, lucid dreaming is bullshit, man. I don't believe that stuff. Absolutely wrong. 1975, at Hull University in the United Kingdom, lucid dreaming was first verified as a scientific fact. Of course, people had known that lucid dreaming had been around for thousands of years. In the Buddhist tradition, 1,000 years. In the Toltec Mexica tradition of the shamanic Mexicans, it had been around for 1,000 years. In the Sufi tradition of Islam, it had been around for 500 years. So people knew lucid dreaming existed. But before 1975, lucid dreaming was viewed as a paradoxical impossibility. They said there was no way you could be both conscious and asleep at the same time. They believed that consciousness was predicated upon your eyes open being awake. We now know that just isn't true. Then later, in the 80s, a few years later at Stanford University, a man, very famous guy called Stephen LaBerge, did very similar tests and got similar results. He got all his stuff kind of peer reviewed though, so he's the guy who gets most of the credit. And then later, and around 2010, 2011, 2012, they did some studies in Germany where they got people to have a lucid dream in a brain scanner. And that's when really the bets were in, because they saw what happened to the brain when you become lucid. Back to the brain. When you're having non-lucid dreams, like 99% of our dreams are non-lucid, right? Until we've done the training. The back part of the brain is highly activated. Visual cortex, brainstem, occipital lobe. Front part of the brain, prefrontal cortex, very little activation in non-lucid dreams. Now, the scientists believe that your prefrontal cortex is where your sense of self resides, or at least the neural networks that create our sense of self reside. So the Charlie program, the like Me, My, I program is around here. And in a non-lucid dream, this area gets very little blood flow, which is why I can dream I'm other people. I can dream I'm a child when I'm a man, when I'm an adult. I can dream I'm a woman when I'm a man. I can dream I'm an animal when I'm a human. I mean, you've had crazy dreams you're other people, right? Where you live in different places, which doesn't seem to be you. That's because your sense of self can become very flexible in the dream state because the prefrontal cortex is switched off. However, once you become lucid, the prefrontal cortex switches on. And that's how your sense of self comes online and you go, oh, I'm Charlie having a lucid dream. Here's the cool thing. When they put the dude in the brain scanner and he managed to get lucid, that front part of the brain switched on and they saw, oh, just as we thought, the right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the area associated with self-perception, with sense of agency, with sense of I am having experience, lights up like a Christmas tree. You can find that online, actually, the video of it. It's so cool. But here's the cool bit. Once that front part of the brain lights up, not only does our sense of self come online, but another amazing phenomena of the brain comes online. It's called neuroplasticity. I'm sure you guys have heard of this. Hit me a yes in the chat box if you've heard of neuroplasticity. I know you Mindvalley guys will have heard of this. Yeah. 1,000 yeses coming in. Okay, cool. So I'm preaching to converted here. Neuroplasticity is essentially the neurobiological basis of habit. If anyone watching this plays piano, I do not play piano. If you play piano, if we were to open up your skull and find the part of the brain to do with hand-to-eye coordination, that part of the brain in your head would be literally thicker than the same part of the brain in my head because you spend hours working your hand-to-eye coordination, playing piano. I have not. So neuroplasticity isn't just psychological, it is physiological. It literally rewires and changes the shape of certain parts of our brain. In a non-lucid dream, because the prefrontal cortex is not engaged, neuroplasticity is engaged to a very, very low level. So you can dream about soccer all you like. Unless you're lucid, you're not going to get any better at soccer. Here's the cool thing. Once you become lucid and that part of the brain switches on, neuroplasticity becomes engaged. What does this mean? It means you can rewire your brain while you sleep. If this sounds shocking, it should. Studies have shown that once you become lucid in your dream, the brain doesn't think you're sleeping. The brain doesn't think you're imagining. The brain doesn't think you're dreaming. The brain thinks you're awake. So whatever you do once you become lucid, the brain starts to rewire itself in favor of that action. This means you can literally get better at physical, real life stuff through practicing it in your lucid dreams. One of the first studies they did was using German athletes, and they got them to do squats. So squats, right? Like you do in the gym. Squats. They teach these guys to lucid dream. They give them like three months of training, right? And rather than allowing them in their lucid dreams to integrate their trauma, to commune with God, to do their spiritual Buddhist practice in their dreams, they're allowed to do one thing only. And that was squats. So they check to see how many squats they can do in the waking state. Then they go into the lucid dream. They're hooked up to the brain scanners, all this kind of stuff. And in the lucid dream, they do squats. Of course, they're asleep in bed, but in the dream, in their dream body, they do squats. The next day, they test them compared to the control condition. The control condition was visualization. So you might think, oh, isn't visualization just as good? Not quite, because the lucid dream is a 100% visualization. You cannot get more of a visualization than a lucid dream. Long story short, those who practice squats in their lucid dreams got better at squats in the waking state. Fast forward to the next study before we have a little time for questions. I see Jason on the screen. Thank you, bro. The last study was a 2018 study that I was part of. Now, I'm really into martial arts, like 15 years of martial arts. I got a black belt in kickboxing, used to fight competitively, love it. And I love lucid dreaming. So a research study came up where they needed people who were good at lucid dreaming and who loved martial arts. So I was like, brilliant, I'm going to be part of this. They had us go into the lucid dream state and practice a kick sequence that you found difficult to do in the waking state. A small research team, so there were only kind of 20 participants or something. Of those 20 participants, 81.3% who practiced their martial arts in their lucid dreams reported marked waking state improvement. 81.3% of the martial artists got better by training in their lucid dreams. Now, here's the confession. Myself, embarrassingly, the dude who was supposed to be the expert in the study, I didn't get any better. I didn't get any worse, but I didn't get any better, but I had to be truthful. I tried it in the dreams and I just didn't get any better at kicking the waking state. So maybe I did it wrong, but 81.3% got better. So you might be thinking, okay, well, that's cool. So I can rewire my brain in the lucid dream, but I'm not into martial arts and I don't care about squats. My booty looks good already. Okay, well, let's apply this to everything else. Imagine if you go into the lucid dream and you practice kindness. Imagine if you go into the lucid dream and you practice integrating childhood trauma. Imagine if you go into the lucid dream and you ask questions that unlock your innate capacity to manifest in this life. What if you go into the lucid dream and you meet your inner artist and ask them questions? What if you go into the lucid dream and you practice being the person you know you could be? If you could only move beyond the barriers of fear that prevent you being that person right now. If you could do that, you could literally change your life while you sleep. And I think that's a cool place to stop for questions.
Charlie, I'm like, mind blown. Where do I sign up? Man. Give me the Kool-Aid. I'm going to chug it. I'm in.
Brilliant.
This is amazing. This is so exciting. And I'm so fascinated by, I had no idea how much of the research had already been done. That to me is mind blowing. It's so exciting to see. And I know a lot of people are submitting some questions here. So we're doing our best to answer as many questions as possible. So please do take a moment to go into the Q&A and start voting up. Have a scan at the questions that have been asked. We're going to do our best to ask them. And I'm pulling them up here. There's some pretty amazing questions here. And before I go to those, because people are still voting them up right now, is, the moment you mentioned that, I keep thinking of, the first time I got exposed to lucid dreams potential was by reading Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill's book talks about like the dream state mastermind. Yes. And that to me was absolutely incredible. So, okay, we got some big questions up, and a big one here. It comes from Maria S. And she's asking, Can you aid or cure health conditions through lucid dreamings?
Great question, Maria. Okay, so I do not want to give anyone false hope. So I'm going to tell you now, these are anecdotal reports. There's not been a scientific study on it. I'm currently part of a research team that has applied for funding to try and get the research grant for this, so hold tight. But right now, we've only got anecdotal reports. However, it seems that in the lucid dream state, because you're in a 100% visualization, as I mentioned before, because you can't get more of a visualization than the lucid dream, if you apply visualized healing techniques within the lucid dream, it seems to have a very powerful effect. Now, you might say, oh, it's just a placebo. Okay. But anyone who says just before the term placebo does not understand the placebo. The placebo is not just a placebo. It should be, wow, the placebo. So it seems like because the placebo is the mind affecting the body, if you engage the placebo effect plus visualize healing within a mind created reality of the lucid dream, they work together in a very powerful way. I used to wear glasses. You'll see in my early videos, all my YouTube videos, I've got glasses on. I now don't wear glasses. That took me 3 or 4 lucid dreams. I wouldn't say my eyesight's 100% now, but I'll tell you what, I don't need glasses. I don't need glasses I used to. Watch the theater, go to cinema, stuff like that. I just don't need them. Let me run you through what I tried. First of all, I tried visualized healing. So I would go into the lucid dream. Oh, wow, I'm dreaming. I want to heal my eyes. So I put my hands over my eyes and I would call out, my eyes are healed. My eyes are healed. And I had light coming out of the palms of my hands and I'm calling out the affirmations. That's what you want to do. Visualize healing plus affirmation to engage the kind of placebo effect power, right? And the next day I woke up, no different. Tried a second time, no different. Third time, I think it was the third time it did work actually. Third time, I was about to do the hands-on healing like that. And then this voice in the lucid dream, like over an intercom, but is my voice, but disembodied, said, Charlie, the reason you can't see is because there is a conflict in your eyes. And I was like, who said that? I mean, I said that, but what the heck? There's a conflict in my eyes. And it just hit like a penny dropping. All dis-ease is based on conflict. There's some sort of conflict in the muscles of my eyes. There's some sort of conflict in me not wanting to see clearly, perhaps my own self. And I dropped my hands. I didn't do the hands-on healing. And I called out in the dream, my eyes are free of conflict. My eyes are free of conflict. And the dream started like an earthquake. And shh. Now, I told that to someone recently and they said, maybe that was the feeling of your neural pathways rewiring. I had no idea. But I know I woke up and I haven't worn my glasses since. So it does seem possible. A guy I worked for on Skype just last week, he had chronic back pain. He went into the lucid dream. He rubbed his hands together, went healing hands, put them on his back in the lucid dream. He said it felt like electricity going through his back. He woke up and the back pain's gone. And that's 2 weeks with no back pain. Maybe it will come back in a month and he needs to have another kind of lucid dreaming treatment. Who knows? I know it's possible. I've tried it myself. I'd say I've got about 10 or 11 anecdotal reports, which I'm going to put in the next book. But these are not scientifically verified yet. But if you believe in visualized healing and the power of the placebo, I think it's a great possibility. What I would say is try it. You've got nothing to lose. You know, either it works and brilliant or it doesn't work. You haven't lost anything. You can't damage yourself in the lucid dream. It could only be beneficial. So if you do have a health condition, why not try it?
That's incredible. And also I realize I know everybody here has so many questions and we have so little time. So I want to ask one more here, which I think is really powerful. It's from Chris Tado. And he's talking about, does lucid dreaming potentially negatively affect your natural sleep cycle rhythm, as in shortening the REM sleep cycle, or, you know, are you missing out on sleep? Are you not getting the deep sleep? What's happening there?
Yeah, great question. So lucid dreams happen in REM dreaming sleep, rapid eye movement dreaming sleep. Now, straight off the bat, REM dreaming sleep is not a restful sleep state. In fact, REM dreaming sleep is so active, you actually burn calories when you dream. So anyone on a diet, dream a lot because it actually burns calories. You look at someone's brain when they're dreaming, back part lit up like a Christmas tree, loads of activity, because of course it takes a lot of brain power to create the internal hallucination that we call dreams, right? So number one, it's not a restful sleep state. Number two, it's not a restful sleep state anyway. So you might have had the experience where you wake up from a really crazy dream, non-lucid, and you almost feel tired. You're like, oh God, in that dream, I was running for a bus and then a zombie was chasing me and all this. You feel kind of psychologically tired. Now, if you were lucid in those dreams, that psychological tiredness would be negated because you'd know, oh, there's no bus to run for. This zombie isn't real. So actually, once we become lucid, often tiredness is negated. If you then add to that the fact that once you become lucid, often the brain starts to move into gamma brainwave states. Now, I'm sure Vishen will know all about this because he's really into this kind of neurohacking and all the cool stuff he does with brain states. Gamma is the brainwave usually associated with these monks who'd done over 10,000 hours of meditation. Well, that's when it first became popularized about 10 years ago. What they've discovered is once you become lucid in a dream, very often the brain goes into gamma. Now, the scientists are going, oh, I wonder why that is. The Buddhists are going, because you're in a deep state of meditation when you're lucid dreaming naturally. So because of that, often you have this thing called the gamma effect, which is when you wake up from a lucid dream, you actually feel buzzing. You feel like, whoa, I feel really good. And that's because your brain's been flooded with gamma. And the third aspect, I'd say, even if you have a lucid dream every night of your life, 7 days a week, firstly, come and teach me how to do it because I can't do that yet. My practice isn't that stable. Secondly, even if if you were having a lucid dream every night of the week, 95% of your dreams would still be non-lucid because you have 5 dream periods a night based on an 8-hour sleep cycle, multiple dreams in each dream period. So even if you get lucid once a night, 95% of your dreams are non-lucid. So if you're worried about kind of messing with the unconscious